good morning, everybody. This is Jill here. Thank you for joining me over on my regular Facebook page today. It is Tuesday morning. It's 10 a.m. I'm going to turn on my comments so I can make sure that I can see you when you come on. So this morning I'm doing something a little bit different. Every Tuesday morning at 10 I do go live here on Facebook, but it's over in a private Facebook group that I have for painters. And I'm usually, sharing tips and strategies and demos and different things like that over in that group. But today I just wanted to do it here on my page so that I could kind of expose the rest of my Facebook page to, the private group that I'm doing. So I'm doing a live demo over here today instead of over in my group. Okay. So in fact, I'll show you just real quickly. Here is a little thumbnail of the painting reference that I'm using today. So a little bit of candlelight, it's kind of festive, and I think one of the interesting things about using this today, it gives me a little bit, hey Tanya, good to see you. It gives me a little bit of dynamic contrast, in addition to being kind of festive and seasonal. Painting candlelight is a little bit of a challenge, and because of those real high contrast dynamics that are going on, right? So I thought it would be kind of a fun one to do. And if painting along with me is something that you're interested in, many of you have taken workshops with me before, and if it's something that you're interested in, come over to my Facebook group. Okay, it's called The Intentional Painter. I'll put a link up, but you can also just do a search for it. But every Tuesday I meet there live. With painters. Sometimes we just have sort of a little chat session, but most of the time I'm sharing some kind of demo of either a technique or a process or doing a product demonstration. I also do critiques for members and that type of thing. And one of the main reasons that I have the group is that's where I launch my paid workshops. And so every time I do a paid workshop, though, I always do a free bonus session right at the beginning of the workshop before it starts. And if you're interested in that free bonus workshop, it always takes place in that group. Okay, so come on over to the group, join up. All you have to do is just go over there. I think you submit your email address and you're in, and we meet there every Tuesday. Okay, and you get access to lots of free stuff. So The Intentional Painter, you can check it out, and I'll also put a link on the video description here when we're done today. So let's see who else is here. Hey Pam, good morning. Yeah, if you're coming in, thank you so many. Oh, you know what? It's showing me everybody's name this time. That's awesome. Hey Karen, so good to see you. I appreciate it so much for you coming in. So let's just take a look real quick. I'm going to go back to the little demo, the little photo reference that we're using. Good morning, Mary Lou. So good to see you. All right, so here's the little candle. All right, so we've got a lot of things going on here. It's not a very dynamic color palette, but we do have really rich darks and then really vivid brights. Okay, so the challenge here with a painting like this is we've kind of got to make sure we've drawn it well, and then we've got to really work on those really soft transitions from those real bright light areas over into the dark. Okay, so I'm going to kind of walk you through that a little bit today. I'm not going to go into super in depth because I don't want to keep you here all day. But if you're interested in doing this demo, okay, after it's over with and you want to paint along, I'm going to post the whole thing. I'm going to share it in my group, okay, and The Intentional Painter. And so if you want to go over there, you'll have access to the reference photo. I'll have a list of all the colors that we're using. I'll talk about them today as we go, but everything that you'll need will be over there if you want to take a look and try the demo on your own. Okay, all right, so let's go ahead. I'm going to switch over to my work area. Hey Cindy, so good to see you. As we're going, if anybody has questions or comments, just kind of feel free to put those up there, and I'm going to be looking as we go. So again, with the candle, I've got a photo reference here at my work area. So I'm kind of just doing a really tall sort of vertical orientation here. I kind of wanted to just really zoom in on this little candle on the flame and really let that be the highlight of the show here. I'm kind of leaving off a little bit of some of the background area, but I just want to start sketching out some basic shapes here, just really getting the shape of this flame into place. Now, you know, there's a couple of ways that you can approach this. Sometimes you can mask off the flame if you want. As large as this flame is in relationship to pretty much the entire painting, I think I'm not going to worry so much about having it masked off. I'm just going to be careful with my brushwork and just make sure that I stay out of that area. All right, so I'm just loosely kind of sketching, blocking in right here. If you notice in the photo, there's lots of just sort of, you can see those bokeh lights. That's sort of a photography term, but those soft little points of light that are kind of floating around in the background, just letting you know that there are probably other candles, you know, that are in the vicinity. They're kind of in the background, but they're just sort of blurry, and we're not really seeing those too much. I'm probably going to try to add a few of those. In the photo there are quite a few, and I don't think that I want to really bring that much sort of activity or visual stuff going on in the background. I think I'll just maybe just do a few. So I'm just sort of getting this little rough edge. The candle is molten on the top, and I really like all those little shapes and things, but I want to just kind of simplify some of them. And you can see all the little drips going down the side as well. And then of course the candle just sort of dissipates in color and just disappears into the darkness there. So lots of nice drama going on, but again, it can be a challenge, you know, when you're working on painting these things. You got to be really careful about your values. And my students know, I know some of you that are watching today are actually some of my students right now that we've got a workshop going on right now, but you hear me say it all the time, you know, value, value, value. It's just, value is always key. Value defines things, defines all the forms, more so than color. Color is really secondary. It's a player in the whole show, but you know, really that all those values working together, that's what's really the important part. Value tells you all the forms. All right, so I'm just sketching in and making sure that I'm sort of connecting with a few highlights here, and I'm kind of just sketching lightly, getting the shapes here. And as far as the drawing, you know, there's really not a whole lot going on here. There are lots of textures in the stem of the candle right here, but I'm not going to worry about trying to draw all those in. I'm just going to handle that with paint when I come back through. Lots of things going on. Lots of glow and all that kind of stuff. Okay. All right, so I think that's all I'm going to do as far as the drawing. All right, so I've got a lot of background to work with, and it's really dark, and so I've got several different, you know, the temptation might be to just come in there and just load it up with some black paint, and I am going to mix up a dark paint, but it's not just black by itself, okay? It's a mixture so that we have some nice rich color. But where we need to start though is with preserving all of these lights. This is just clear water. I'm coming in with that and filling in this whole background area. And of course, I'm not touching the flame. I'm leaving that dry white paper, but I'm putting water everywhere, including the candle. But I'm making sure that that flame, there's no part of that flame. I'm even going to get the wick just a little bit. No part of this flame is going to be wet. Dry white paper. And lots of nice, clear, clean water. I'm just wetting all of this. Make sure you have a nice absorbent wash brush for this. Washes can be very tricky, and you got to make sure that the water balance is just right, or you start getting streaky, dry patches and all these unexpected, undesirable things that you don't want happening. and just making really straight, even lines around that flame. So just dry paper right inside the flame. All right, so I'm using one of my colors. This is it's called quinacridone gold. And like I said, I'll give you a list of all these things. And, you know, anytime you want to work on this, you know, I'm going to have all of this in my group. And if you want to come over there, it's free to work on all this. You'll have access to the picture and all that kind of stuff. All right, so I'm going to start laying in this golden color. I'm just using this color straight right out of the tube. These are tube colors that I'm using, by the way. I've just you know, squeezed them out onto my palette, and they kind of just live there. But I'm painting very often, so I go through it pretty quick. And I'm just getting this gold color kind of laid out everywhere. Those darks are coming, but we gotta set the foundation first with all of these nice glowy colors. It's very light. I'm getting into some of my Quin Sienna. It's a little bit deeper, sort of burnt orange kind of color, I guess. And, oops. I'm just very loosely blocking in sections of color. You know, the bottom of that candle has got that really nice glowing orange happening down at the bottom. I want to make sure that I'm incorporating that too. And the colors are kind of really loose and flowing around right now, and I'm really not concerned about that at the moment. Those things are going to come into play here later. I'm dropping some violet into my Quin Sienna to get a little bit darker down here. I want to keep building this glowing color. You know, all of this is eventually going to be completely dark out here in these outer areas, but you know, this glow is really foundation, and it's lying up under everything. So I need to make sure that I position it carefully in here. And so basically this is my brightest spot. I want to work with watercolor. You need to work light to dark. So I'm starting with all my lights, got this really intense bright flame, and then all of the colors are radiating out. All these light colors are radiating out. And then after I get those in place the way that I need to, then I'll start with the dark colors on the outer edges and work those back in toward the flame. All right, so some more of this purpley. This is violet and Quin Sienna down here at the bottom. Really nice and dark down at the bottom. So you can see all of these colors when you add them in wet on wet into that paper. They just give you all these nice soft gradients just effortlessly. They just all play along nicely together. Let me get all this moisture off the edge of my tape here. One thing when you're doing a nice big wash area like this, you want to make sure you keep your edges clean, because having extra water sort of hanging around at the edge, sometimes it can have a tendency to want to make its way back into your painting, and sometimes it's not that big of a deal, especially if you've got foliage or something like that going on. But when you want a nice smooth gradient, we don't need any troublemakers coming back in there and kind of upsetting things. All right, so let me just hold this up just so you can see kind of where we're at. This is sort of one of these first layers to get these nice golden tones. And you see the flame is still just, it's bright white paper. Nothing, no pigment in there, no water in there, not anything. All right, so, all right, at this point I need to dry this so I can start with the next layer. So nice and dry there. All right, let's come back in for another layer. All right, so I'm going to do the same thing that I did in the beginning. I'm coming back over and getting everything wet again, except for the flame. And if you're wondering, well, it was already wet, why are we wetting it again? Well, that's one of those things with watercolor. When the colors are under there, you know, I need this layer of light value under here, but I can't really add anything to it while it's still wet and all of that pigment is moving around and suspended in the water. I need it to go ahead and fix to the paper so that it's permanent, or not permanent, it's kind of semi-permanent. You can disturb it a little bit, but I want it to really connect and fuse to the paper and not move around. And so that's what the drying does. Now I can come back in and add more value on top of what I have here without disturbing that first layer. And that's one of the things that gives watercolor its transparency and its glowing effect. All these nice layers, because they are transparent. The light is still working through all of those layers. All right, so I'm going to get back into my gold. This is my Quin Gold. And this time I'm going to come out a little bit more. You can already start to imagine some of this glow really coming together here. There's a lot going on, and you build these layers up and you just really start to see the glow come to life. And I love Quin Gold, quinacridone gold. Daniel Smith makes it. And it really is like candlelight in a tube. It's just wonderful. In a lot of ways, it's kind of similar to cad yellow, but it has a different type of transparency and luminosity that you just don't find with the cad yellow. And it's already got that nice warm tone, so that you don't really have to do too much there. I know that there's a glare on the page, but let me hold that up. You can really start to see how the light is going to be coming out here. Let me look and see. Oh, Tanya had a good question. Thank you for that, Tanya. Tanya said, can you sort of, you can kind of, yes, to mix a quinacridone gold, can you add cad yellow and Quin Sienna? And yes, it is a fair substitute. It is. It really is. If you don't have the Quin Gold, it's definitely it's a good way to get as close to it. That's about the best way to try to emulate that color. The Quin colors are just so wonderful. You'll hear me talk about them a lot if you're in one of my classes, but they've got such incredible, vivid characteristics and qualities to them, and they have so many wonderful uses. I love that they're so vivid, because when I need the color to be vivid, it's right there for me, right out of the tube. And then if I need to tone the value down or tone the chroma down a little bit, it's real simple to do. I'm going to even get some hot pink in here. I know that there isn't pink in this candle, but I want to. This is one of these tricks where you can really come in, you know, with some other colors that you might not consider, to just really bring some real intensity to those oranges that are in there. It really brings them out. Everything's very wet. That's why I'm getting all these nice, really nice soft edges. I'm just lifting out a little bit. Any of these areas that have gotten a little bit too much value, the little lip of this rolled candle, you can see the edge of it, right where the wax has melted and it rolls over. It's a little bit lighter, so I'm just using my brush while this is still a soft, wet value. I'm just lifting out a little bit. Watercolor is kind of an unforgiving medium. It really demands that you kind of make really good decisions, like to begin with. There's not a lot of room for correction, but at the same time, I really, really enjoy sort of that. I didn't at first when I first started working in watercolor. I hated that it seemed to demand so much planning and good decision making. But then I started to realize that I really like a lot of the effects that watercolor gives me with some of its unexpected twists and turns. And it's kind of helped me to chill out a lot, just as a painter and as a person. You know, it's like, it's really okay. I can just relax and trust that the medium is going to cooperate with me and do something beautiful. This is some transparent orange. That's a really nice Winsor Newton color. And so see that orange and all that pink, it just absolutely starts to glow down here. And watercolor does dry lighter than what you see when it's wet, so you can get comfortable over time going a little bit darker than you think maybe you need to. Sometimes it'll just feel like it's really, really dark, but once it dries, you'll see that it was really kind of that was the neighborhood you needed to be in. Some more Quin Gold in here. You know, Tanya, you had mentioned earlier about, you know, mixing the Quin Gold, to make a Quin Gold, to use the Quin Sienna with a little bit of Cad Yellow. And yes, you can do that, but a lot of times what can happen, you know, this is a lot of, you know, there's a bunch of Quin Sienna in here, and so sometimes it makes it a little bit harder to see your transitions, because if the yellow, the gold that you're using already has a lot of Quin Sienna in it, sometimes it can make the transition, it can make one color, make the two colors not have a whole lot of variation between the two, because they're sharing that same value, that same color. All right, I'm going to switch over to a smaller brush so that I can start I'm going to get some more of this Quin Sienna in here, and a little bit of orange. I really want it to be kind of vivid. I can tell, just because I know what's going to happen, I need to go a little bit more intense right here, because when it dries, it's really going to be a lot lighter in value than what it appears right here. There's some little striations and whatnot in the candle because the wax is melting. And so I'm just adding a little bit there. And I love this glow. I can even come back down here. I think I'm going to do it with my Cad Yellow. Because Cad Yellow is heavy, it's a heavy pigment, I can come in here and kind of drop it. And it'll sort of sit on top a little bit. There's an interesting little glow that's happening kind of down in this little shadow area. I want to try to catch that. I'm going to switch to a smaller brush just because it changes the amount of pigment that I'm dropping into the painting at one time. I want to start controlling that a little bit more. We talk about that as one of those water balance issues that you have to watch out for with your brushes and your paper. It's sort of this dance that you're constantly doing and keeping up with. So I'm definitely wanting to control the amount of water that or the amount of pigment and water that I'm allowing to come into the composition at this point, because I'm getting a little bit more sort of exacting on where I want to place these colors. And you can see there's a lot of excuse me, you can see there's a lot of bleeding of the colors and, you know, that type of thing coming out of the side of the candle, and I am not concerned about that right now. We've got a lot of dark value that's going to be coming in here shortly, and all of those edges are going to be sharpened by that dark value that comes in. You'll see that in just a little bit. So sometimes, you know, it's not too critical what might be going on. You just, the more you practice, the more you start to pick up on what you should sweat and what you should not sweat. And those fuzzy edges on the candle are definitely, we don't have to worry about those right now. So I'm just doing a little bit of lifting. I'm seeing some color coming down, lighter value coming into some of this. All I'm doing, I'm just, you know, going back into my reference photo. I'm just looking carefully back and forth and keeping up with the values that I'm seeing. I'm using my little dagger brush. It's probably, apart from my large wash brush or my large round brush, this has got to be my favorite brush. It lets me do so many things. I'm just picking up on a few little details here. All right, I'm going to point again where I need to dry. I was just looking up at my chart, or my screen up there. I see a couple new people. Marcy is there. Hey Marcy, I'm so glad to see you. I wish I could actually see you. And Martha Griffith, so nice to see you. All right, so I'm just taking this opportunity to kind of come back up into my candle flame, and there were just some tiny little ghost-like pencil lines from where I had sketched it out, and there's a couple little spots that I can't quite get out. That's one of the things that you learn with working with watercolor. Once you get your paper wet, once you get a pencil line wet, whether it's just water or pigment, then it belongs to you forever because it fuses it to the paper. It locks that graphite into the paper. Okay, all right. So nice and dry. Again, we're starting to see a little bit of glow happening here. I'm going to hold this up a little bit closer so that you can see. But you know, that white paper of the flame, you know, that's going to remain the color of that flame the entire time. That was our brightest white, and so that's what the paper serves that purpose for us, to make sure that we've got that same really vivid, intense, bright light that's coming in there. All right, so going back to the same thing, I'm going to wet the background again. I want to lock those colors in. They're nice and locked in. This time I'm going to skip around the body of the candle, though. I'm going to go around that this time and not get that wet. Got a lot of nice values happening in there, but the candle itself, you know, there are lots of things going on in there, but we've kind of got the values, the amount of color that we need in there now, and I don't want any of this dark background color to bleed into it and all of that. It needs to stay left alone. Some of the edges of this candle are a little bumpy, so you want to just watch that. Keep that shape. When you're using your wash brush, if you have a square one, a flat one, you know, you can use those corners of the flat to really get into the little corners. And the brush that I'm using, it is actually a number 12 round brush, but it is natural hair, so it's very absorbent, carries lots and lots of water, and will also come to a very nice point when I need that. So that's something to consider when you're working on it. You know, typically a wash brush might be just a big, heavy, round thing like this, and obviously that's very difficult to get into the tight spaces. So you can kind of mix it up however you need to, depending on what brushes you have to work with. All right, so now I'm going to get into this. I'm going to start bringing some dark into this. So I'm going to build a dark off of a few different colors. And if you're familiar with my classes or with my work, you know that I like lots and lots of granulation and visual texture in my work. But when I'm doing this particular painting, that nice transition from all of those warm, glowing colors into that real intense black that's back there, I don't really want any visual texture. I want a nice smooth transition. So I'm going to avoid colors that are going to give me lots of granulation. So I'm going to have to, you know, build a dark using colors without my ultramarine blue and some of these others, you know, my bloodstone and different things like that. I'm going to avoid those colors because they give me lots and lots of granulation visual texture. So I'm using my Quin Sienna again, this violet. I'm also using some phthalo blue, very, very intense. And all of these colors are colors that are going to stay mixed together. That's another thing that happens with those granulation colors. That's why you want to avoid those. They separate from one another, which gives you those nice, really cool textures. But like I said, we want to keep everything nice and smooth. So we're starting to get dark. I've got kind of this dark brownish eggplant kind of color, and I'm actually I need some more. This is not going to be enough. This is another thing when you're doing a large area. This is kind of big. I want to make sure that I've got more than enough, because the last thing I want to deal with is to get into this and then I don't have enough, and that's going to be very frustrating. So still mixing these same three colors together. I just want to get up a nice big puddle of it. The purple, the quinceanna and the phthalo blue. Okay, that's doing pretty good. And then lastly, I'm going to add some neutral tint. Neutral tint, I won't get into how, neutral tint is just kind of its own unique pigment. A lot of people think that it's just a dark gray, and it is, but it has some really special benefits that are really, really fun to work with. All right, so got this really nice dark. You can see that it's this homemade black, okay? I'm going to see if I can get it a little closer to the screen. There is sort of a warm tone to it. It's kind of maybe hard to see in this, but when I thin it, you can kind of see that there's a warm tone to it. It's not a cold black. It's just a nice warm color. I'm going to scrape my brush off because I want to save as much of that as I can. And you notice I wet my paper a little bit ago and then took time to mix. I want this paper, I want that paper to, I want it to be wet, but I also want that paper the water to have had some time to sort of soak into the paper just a little. And then I'm mixing up a second color over here where it's just sort of that black mixture just with some of the quinceanna. So it's almost like a kind of a brownish sort of color. And I'm also going to throw a little bit of my orange in there. I want some warm undertone happening there. So I've got this kind of this dark brown and a black going. All right, so cleaning up my brush. Now I'm ready to start working on this. All right, I'm getting up some of just the brown, and I'm going to start laying it in. And the paper is wet, so it's going to kind of just be a soft wet on wet when it goes into the paper. I'm just laying it in here. And in my photo, that dark color really comes, in the photo, the background's almost borderline boring because it's just solid black without any sense of movement or light or anything happening in there. It's a little flat to me. So I want to kind of work at, create something that's a little bit more engaging. So I'm going to, start bringing this dark color in, the lighter one, and then slowly build up that dark color because I want to have a nice transition of that glow happening all the way around. So this is kind of like the scary part, you've done all this work on the candle, and then you come in here with this really intense dark color, and it can almost feel like, we were talking to one of my art friends the other day, and we were talking about, these risks that you take with your paintings, and it kind of feels like, if you've been to an amusement park and you think you're brave and you want to get up there and get on that ride, and they click the bar down and then it starts moving and you're like, oh my God, what was I? This was kind of stupid. I don't know why I thought I should do this. So I know it can feel like that sometimes. All right, so you can see lots of movement of value happening right here. I'm going to let that do its thing. I'm not going to disturb that. And then down here, I brought some of that dark color in, but I need to come up here just so that I can create some transition. I'm just wetting that line so that I don't have a big hard line there. And then some of these little shapes, you see the little shapes in the wax, the melted wax, there's little dark striations. I want to get some of that happening too. So with my little brush so that I can control, I'm going to go ahead and I'm looking at my photo so that I can kind of figure out where these little stripes are. And I am working quickly here because this wants to dry on me. The paper is really dry right here on where the candle is. So I don't want to mess around here. I want to pay attention to make sure I'm getting up in there. And there's really a lot of that nice orange. I'm going to drop some orange in here too. You can start to see the glow. It's trying so hard to happen. I'm just leaving that alone, all of that. I know it would be, the temptation is to come in here and start to fiddle. And the less you can fiddle, you know, watercolor will do a lot of work on its own if you'll kind of let it. You know, everybody's been micromanaged, and I know what it feels like, and I'm sure you do too. You're probably thinking, if people would just leave me alone, I could really get a lot more done. And just know that your pain is telling you that too. You're not really helping it. Sometimes it might feel like you're helping it, but most of the time, you're not really helping. Now this way, I'm doing a little bit of back painting or lifting here. I got this dark value that's down here, and there are little tiny, I can see little shafts of lighter value that kind of sneak down into this darker shadow area. And I'm just doing that by wetting my brush, and because everything is wet, that wet water, you know, when that comes in here, it's enough to kind of lift and cause those other colors to sort of get suspended in that water and move around a little bit. So you can start to have a little more control with that. You guys are awesome for hanging in here with me, because, you know, when you watch somebody paint at regular, you know, real-time speed, I know sometimes it's, I don't know, sometimes I typically like watching people paint, but so I'm going to guess that you are too. All right, I'm just continuing to be mindful and careful and work my way through some of these values. These little, you know, don't obsess. I mean, you know, it's possible for me to sit here and really make just absolute photorealistic color choices here with this, but I'm just not going to do that. All right, so I'm going to leave the candle kind of where it is at the moment, because there's a bunch of work that needs to be done, like right up here in the top of the candle, but I can see that my outside layer here is starting to, it's just at that right moment where I can start adding this dark color in here. All right, so here comes the really dark color. So this is the next roller coaster ride, right? Start putting this in, and you can see the background is very wet. There aren't puddles, okay? There is a difference. You don't want puddles, but you do want good water balance here so that this pigment can really, because it's dark, it's so intense, and so it can come in and just knock everything off the shelf, okay, if you're not careful. So we want to make sure that it cooperates and plays nicely with all the other values that we've got going. So having that nice wet paper is going to let that happen. Now I'm going to stay, I want to protect this glow, okay, so I don't want to bring that dark value just crashing in, okay. I've got to keep it back. And you notice I keep, this is another thing that I stress in my classes, I keep filling my brush with pigment, okay. I think everybody has had a chance to use a roller to paint a wall, and I know how it feels when you've filled up your roller and that paint tray is 3 steps away and you don't want to go fill it up again, so you just smash harder to get the roller to just eke out one last vestige of hope, you know, of that pigment, of that paint, because you don't want to have to go load up your brush again. I get it, but just like with the wall, it is better on your painting too. Just go back and get more. Just go back and get more. It makes everything better. I'm dropping down to a smaller brush again, just so I can control my volume of pigment that I'm putting down. I want to get close to this glowing edge, but I don't want to lose it. So I've got to control the amount that I'm putting down. The bottom of that candle just sort of, you know, it just kind of disappears in the dark, and we kind of need that to happen too. But we still want all this vibrant glow happening up here. All right, now at this point I'm going to come in here with clear water and I'm painting right around the flame. And you notice I'm doing it with my small brush. I don't want a lot of water, just a little, so that I can just come around and just barely kiss the edge of that glow. I don't want to disturb it. I just want to add a little bit more water in there, just to give it a little bit of moisture for those little particles to kind of float around in there. This is that lighter brown that I had mixed earlier. Very gently. I want to start kind of closing in just a little. You don't want to overdo this, and the reason that this is working right now is because everything is so wet, and I've not used colors that are going to excessively granulate. Okay, it makes a big difference. All right, so I'm going to let this sit for a second. I'm going to, sometimes, you know, in your paper, kind of got some ripples, so it's building up some little hard puddles of brown. I'm just tilting my board for a second to let some of that run down. But we're starting to see some glow here. It's definitely starting to glow. I'm just tilting my board kind of around and around to let all of this pigment sort of evenly distribute. And if you notice when I'm doing this, see how it's not black, you know, it's not that, just that that dark black that's in the background of the actual candle. You know, it gives us, we've got a little bit of just some natural tone that's got some life to it. I like that dark brown. All right, so let me mop up my edge here. If you're taking a class with me, this is very much the type of format when I'm doing my online class. I'm walking you through, and in my class, you know I'm a lot more, I'm discussing a lot more details about what the objectives are, how much color to mix, and why, and where to put it, and all of that kind of stuff. But this is just sort of, you know, just a quick and dirty, you know, you're basically kind of watching me paint while I talk about it. But you can ask anybody that's been in one of my classes what they think about it. And guys, if you're out there and you have had a class or you're in one now, you can definitely let people know what you think about it. So, all right, coming together. Again, this is very wet. Everything is wet, so that's why it's working. I can see in my photo that the dark background, it kind of pinches in just a little bit right here at the base of the flame, so I want to add a little bit of that kind of thing happening down here. It's very small, it's very subtle, but all right, so let me dry this so I can do the next layer. Lots of nice glow happening here. All right, so let's jump into some of these details that are happening inside the candle here. There's lots of nice, these orange, brown kind of colors happening down here, where all the wax is melted and everything is really hot. Let's see if I can zoom in on that. Getting smaller here. Let me see if I can show you a little bit closer, a little bit better. I'm going to start getting the wick in place here. Alright, so I'm just looking carefully at my photo reference and paying attention to value and color and different things that I'm seeing here. These colors are so, I love painting candles. They're really fun, but I love these, all these golden colors. And it's just kind of this little puzzle to get them to all fit together. I'm just using some of that Quin Gold. It's kind of sort of a muddy mixture of Quin Gold and Quin Sienna sort of mixed up together here, but to get this nice warm color of this melted wax that's sitting in here. So the workshop that I'm going to be doing coming up in January, I've got a new one coming up. We're going to be doing a lot of realistic still life along with some abstract landscape. I'm kind of mixing it up. It's a little bit of a combo of like two of my favorite classes that people seem to like the most, and so it's going to be kind of a little bit of both. So we'll do some paintings like this, and we'll also be doing some abstract landscape. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a little bit of a mixture of everything. So I'm going to start working on the bottom side of this candle and getting some more shadows and stuff in here that I see. It seems like a counterintuitive color to use, but I am putting pink on top of this orange because it really just gets it to glow. It's one of those nice things about watercolor. Because they're transparent, they just sort of sit on top of each other and give you lots of nice, different, unexpected effects. Now I'm not doing a total 100%. I'm not even doing a 75% realistic version of this candle, but I don't think that you always have to. I did a lot of realism in my work for a lot of years, and it's fun. I enjoy the challenge of it, but sometimes it's nice to just have fun and experiment and see what happens. There's a little right down at the wick. The flame kind of changes color. It actually has, it's not as hot, I guess, or something. I don't know what the science is, but there's a little bit of color right around the wick. I can just barely see. Just a tiny value there. one more pass of color that I want to do in this. Really starting to get a glow here. All right, again, I'm going to come in here. This is just clear water. And going around the candle. I don't want to get my candle wet, don't want to get my flame wet. Staying far away. One more pass of some dark here. Now, as you start getting darker, you know, I am working a new pass of water on this, but, you know, with a darker value, that pigment can start to want to move on you just a little bit, just because there's more of it, it's heavier, and you can loosen it a little bit more. So you just want to watch that. I'm mixing up a little bit more here. Still that purple, the Quin, Sienna, the phthalo blue, neutral tint, all the colors. So I guess you kind of have to be brave to jump in here with this dark color, but the only way to do it is to just kind of get in there and do it. But doing it in layers and making sure that you're not using a color that's going to granulate and shift on you is really important. You want a color that's some values that are, or some pigments that are not going to move and give you too many variables. All right, I'm cleaning up that brush. I'm going to get my smaller brush, and I'm going to get back into my Quin Gold. Oh, let me clean a spot where I can see. All right, so get some of my Quin Sienna. I really want to bring some of that warmth in here. I'm not bringing this all the way up to the flame, but I just want to have some of that warmth in there. I might even put a little bit of pink in there too. And I'm definitely going to get some of my Quin Gold. I'm just adding some more water around this to push that glow out a little bit more. All right, we're getting close here. What time is it? Okay, I've been going an hour. All right. What I will probably do, I may not have anybody with me at this point. I'm going to wrap it up here in just a second. I'm almost done adding a few little details right down here. A little bit of color. There we go. A little bit more pink and orange. You gotta have the pink and the orange. All right, let me dry this. I think I might, there's a few of these little bokeh lights that I can take out. And I realize if you need to go, you have to go, but I'm going to keep working on this for just a little bit. There's a few of these little lights, those little bokeh lights that are back there. I think I want to add just a couple of those because I think they're fun. So I'm just using one of my scrubbing brushes here, and I'm just making a little circular spot and then blot. And because we had all of that nice yellow back there from earlier, then when these lift up, I have those nice little warm spots in there. And you can see how I just dropped a water droplet right beside that bokeh spot, so that will become another one. So this is like, you know, the little fairy lights, right? I'm going to, there's not one here, but I'm going to make one here because I accidentally smeared some paint right there. And Bob Ross would say, Maybe that was where a little bird needed to live, but we'll let a little fairy light be there. Go. I've got another little water droplet. It will become a fairy light. Okay, here we go. Let me make it a little bit bigger. I'm going to do one going right off the edge of the top here. There we go. All right. Now I think we're done. All right, so let's see what we got. So, you know, I did this one. This one is probably a, I took a 9x12 sheet of paper and cut it in half. So it's a little bit smaller than 9x12. But, you know, if you did something like this a little bit smaller, you know, and you can not take as much time, you know, and making it smaller will help with that too. But, you know, this would make a nice little card or something like that. But here's the finished piece, and you can see we got all that nice rich dark in the background, but it's not just that boring black. It's got some life to it, and the little bokeh lights are in there as well. So there's a few things that could be done to it. You can always just keep going, right? So anyway, I'm going to call it finished right there. But listen, if you guys are interested in working with that image, come over to my group, join. I'll put a link in there. You can also just search. You know, it's just right down there at the bottom of the page there, the Intentional Painter. Just search that on Facebook, join the group. You'll have access to everything. And in the videos folder, there's a ton of stuff over there. Okay, so there's something every week, every Tuesday at 10. I would love to have you come over there. And thanks so much for joining me today over here on the regular page. And also, if you haven't followed me already, I am on Instagram. So it's just Jill Williams Fine Art over on Instagram. So I would love to have you over there as well. I'm always doing different things, posting different things in different places. So just so you can kind of keep up with everything that I'm going and what's going on, I would love to have you there. So thanks so much, guys. And until next time, happy painting. Let me just look through right quick to make sure. Oh, I'm seeing lots of questions. Okay, hold on. I'm going to answer questions. Okay, excellent. I thought everybody had left. Karen Lee Taylor. Oh, hi, looking good. Thank you, Karen Lee. Yes, I'm using Arches paper, always Arches. It's 140 pound that I'm using here. So always Arches, and I did use a 9x12 sheet today, but I had cut it in half. So I was just using a half of a 9x12. And thanks for that. Karen Lee says, my classes are great. Thank you. I do appreciate that, Karen Lee. Marcy, glowing from within, just like you, Jill. That is so sweet. Oh my gosh, Marcy, I love you. You're so sweet. You're like one of my biggest fans. I just love you. Thank you. Karen, it's lovely. Thank you so much. I'm so glad that you got a chance to see it. Karen Smith Kruger says, beautiful. I tried a candle for this week for Advent, but now I'll try this one. Yeah, definitely. If you're, I think you're already in the group, I do believe, and so that it'll all be over there in just a little bit. I'm going to post everything up. Mary Lou, love it, beautiful. Thank you. You're so welcome, Mary Lou. Thank you so much for joining. If you're seeing this in a replay, just put your questions out there. I'll still get them. Just tag me so that I know that they're there. But I'll check this later, and I'll post everything over in the group, and I'll see you guys next time. So thank you so much. Bye-bye.